Preparing for a Tableau Developer interview? You've reached Candy Mentor, and this video is for you. We'll walk through 20 key questions you're likely to face. For each question, you'll see a sample answer followed by the key points to cover. Subscribe, like, and share, and drop a topic request in the comments. Question 1. What is the difference between dimensions and measures in Tableau? Dimensions are qualitative fields like region, category, or customer name, and they usually define the granularity of the view. Measures are quantitative fields like sales, profit, or quantity, and Tableau aggregates them by default. I explain it as dimensions answering by what, and measures answering how much. A dimension placed on rows slices the data, while a measure gives aggregated values for each slice. This distinction drives chart structure, grouping, filtering, and calculations. While answering, focus on how Tableau classifies fields: discrete versus continuous behavior, aggregation, visual encoding, and how dimensions and measures affect the level of detail in a view. Question 2. When would you use a live connection versus an extract in Tableau? A live connection queries the source system directly, so it is useful when the business needs near real-time data. An extract stores a snapshot in Tableau Hyper, which usually improves dashboard speed and reduces load on production databases. In practice, I choose extracts for large dashboards, historical reporting, and repeated executive views. I choose live connections for operational monitoring, where freshness matters more than speed. The trade-off is always data latency versus query performance. Make sure to cover performance, freshness of data, database load, offline access, extract refresh schedules, hyper engine benefits, and scenarios where real-time reporting is genuinely required. Question 3. Can you explain Tableau's order of operations and why it matters? Tableau's order of operations controls the sequence in which filters and calculations are applied. For example, extract and data source filters happen early, context filters run before regular dimension filters, and table calculation filters happen very late. This matters because two dashboards can show different results using the same filters if the order is misunderstood. I use context filters when a dependent top-N, fixed LOD, or performance-heavy filter must be evaluated earlier. In your answer, talk about extract filters, data source filters, context filters, dimension filters, measure filters, table calculations, and how filter order can change results or performance. Question 4. What are LOD expressions in Tableau, and where have you used them? LOD expressions let me calculate values at a specific level of detail, independent of a current visualization. For example, I can calculate customer lifetime sales using fixed customer, even when the view is at region level. I use LODs for percent of total, first purchase date, cohort analysis, and avoiding duplicate aggregation after joins. The key is knowing filter behavior. Fixed ignores most dimension filters, unless they are added to context. Be sure to mention fixed, include, and exclude expressions, granularity control, aggregation independence from the view, common use cases, and interaction with filters. Question 5. How do fixed, include, and exclude LOD expressions differ? Fixed computes at the exact dimensions I specify, regardless of most dimensions in the view. Include adds extra dimensions to the current view level before aggregating, which is useful for averages like average customer sales by region. Exclude removes dimensions from the view calculation, such as calculating category sales while ignoring subcategory. I choose fixed when I need stable reference values, include for more detailed intermediate calculations, and exclude for broader comparisons. While answering, compare how each expression changes granularity, whether it respects view dimensions, typical business examples, filter behavior, and how incorrect granularity can create misleading results. Question 6. How would you optimize a slow Tableau dashboard? I start with Tableau Performance Recording to identify whether the delay comes from queries, calculations, rendering, or filters. Then I reduce marks, remove unused fields, simplify worksheets, replace high cardinality quick filters, and use extracts when appropriate. I also push heavy logic to the database or Tableau Prep instead of complex row-level calculations. If SQL is slow, I review indexes, joins, and aggregation. Dashboard performance is usually a mix of data model, design, and calculation discipline. Make sure to cover performance recording, reducing marks, optimizing filters, using extracts, minimizing custom SQL, simplifying calculations, hiding unused fields, aggregation strategy, and database-side optimization. Question 7. What is the difference between relationships, joins, and data blending in Tableau? Relationships are Tableau's logical data model. They preserve table granularity and decide joins at query time based on the view. Joins happen in the physical layer and create one combined table, which can duplicate rows if the cardinality is wrong. Blending is older and works by querying a primary and secondary source separately, then combining aggregated results. I prefer relationships for flexible models, joins for controlled SQL-style datasets, and blending only when sources cannot be related cleanly. In your answer, explain logical versus physical layers, row duplication risk, aggregation behavior, cross-database limitations, blending as secondary data source lookup, and when each approach fits. Question 8. How are calculated fields different from table calculations in Tableau? Calculated fields are evaluated either at row level or aggregate level as part of the query result. Table calculations happen after the data is returned to Tableau, based on the visible marks in the view. A profit ratio calculation can be a normal calculated field, but running total, rank, moving average, and percent difference are table calculations. The important part is that table calculations depend on addressing and partitioning, so changing the view can change the answer. Be sure to cover row level versus aggregate calculations, post-aggregation table calculations, addressing and partitioning, examples like running total, percent difference, and when results depend on the view. Question 9. How do parameters work in Tableau, and what are common use cases? A parameter is a user-controlled value that can drive calculations, filters, reference lines, or dashboard behavior. By itself, it does not filter data. I connect it to a calculated field or action. Common uses include switching between sales and profit, selecting top N, changing date granularity, setting threshold bands, or enabling what-if analysis. With dynamic parameters and parameter actions, dashboards feel more interactive, but I still validate performance when parameters trigger complex recalculations. While answering, mention that parameters are user-controlled single values, how they pair with calculated fields, dynamic parameters, parameter actions, metric switching, threshold control, and what parameters cannot do alone. Question 10. How would you implement row-level security in Tableau? I usually implement row-level security with an entitlement table that maps users or groups to allowed regions, customers, or departments. In Tableau, I join or relate that table to the fact data and use functions like username or isMemberOf in a data source filter. This centralizes access rules instead of building separate workbooks. I also test with different users, avoid exposing unrestricted extracts, and coordinate with Tableau Server groups for maintainable security. Make sure to cover user filters, entitlement tables, username or isMemberOf functions, data source filters, server groups, embedded credentials, testing impersonation, and centralized security maintenance. Question 11. What dashboard design practices do you follow for executive reporting? For executives, I design around decisions, not decoration. I put the most important KPIs at the top, show trends and exceptions clearly, and keep filters minimal. Color should carry meaning, such as red for risk and green for target achievement, not random styling. I use tooltips for details instead of overcrowding the screen. The dashboard should answer what changed, why it changed, and where action is needed within a few seconds. In your answer, discuss audience-first design, KPI hierarchy, layout, color discipline, interactivity, tooltips, performance, mobile or desktop consumption, and avoiding chart clutter. Question 12. What are dashboard actions in Tableau, and how have you used them? Dashboard actions let users interact with a view and drive behavior elsewhere in the dashboard. I use filter actions for drill down, highlight actions to compare related marks, URL actions to open external systems, and parameter or set actions for advanced interactivity. For example, clicking a region can update customer details, trend lines, and ranking tables. Good actions make analysis feel guided, but I keep them discoverable and document them with clear titles or instructions. Be sure to cover filter actions, highlight actions, URL actions, parameter actions, set actions, navigation, guided analysis, and how actions improve usability without overloading the dashboard. Question 13. How do you handle publishing, permissions, and refresh schedules on Tableau Server or Tableau Cloud? I treat Tableau Server like a governed analytics platform, not just a file repository. I publish certified data sources separately when multiple workbooks need the same logic. Permissions are managed through groups and projects rather than individual users. For extracts, I set refresh schedules based on business needs and source load windows. I also validate credentials, subscriptions, data-driven alerts, and ownership, so production dashboards remain reliable after the original developer moves on. While answering, cover projects, workbooks, certified data sources, site roles, groups, permission roles, extract refreshes, subscriptions, alerts, ownership, and production deployment discipline. Question 14. How would you validate data accuracy in a Tableau dashboard? I validate at multiple levels. First, I compare row counts and key totals against the source or approved SQL queries. Then, I test filters, joins, LOD calculations, date ranges, and edge cases like nulls or duplicate records. I also confirm metric definitions with business stakeholders, because technical accuracy is not enough if the formula is misunderstood. Before release, I document assumptions and keep validation screenshots or queries for future audits. Make sure to discuss reconciliation with source systems, row counts, aggregation checks, filter assumptions, join duplication, null handling, stakeholder sign-off, test cases, and documenting metric definitions. Question 15. What are sets, groups, and bins in Tableau, and when would you use each? Groups combine dimension members manually, such as merging small product categories into other. Sets define a subset based on selection or logic, like top customers by sales, and they can be dynamic. Bins divide continuous measures into intervals, which is useful for histograms and distribution analysis. I use groups for cleanup, sets for analytical segmentation, and bins for understanding spread. They look simple, but they are powerful for quick exploratory dashboards. In your answer, compare manual grouping, dynamic sets, combined sets, bins for histograms, segmentation use cases, and how these features support exploratory analysis. Question 16. How do you work with dates and time-based analysis in Tableau? Tableau gives two major ways to use dates: discrete date parts like month names, and continuous date values like a timeline. I use date part for components, date trunk for consistent period grouping, and relative date filters for rolling windows. For business reporting, I confirm fiscal calendars and week definitions early. Period-over-period views often need table calculations or LODs. If dates are missing, I use data densification or a calendar table. Be sure to cover continuous versus discrete dates. date parts and date values, fiscal calendars, relative date filters, date truncation, period comparisons, and handling missing dates. Question 17. What is Tableau Prep, and how does it fit into a Tableau workflow? Tableau Prep is used to clean and shape data before visualization. I use it for tasks like renaming fields, splitting columns, pivoting survey data, unioning files, creating calculated fields, and joining lookup tables. Its strength is visual, repeatable preparation for analyst-owned workflows. For enterprise-scale pipelines, I prefer proper ETL tools or database transformations. Prep is best when the transformation is close to reporting and needs to be transparent to dashboard developers. While answering, mention cleaning, reshaping, joins, unions, pivots, calculated fields, flow scheduling, repeatable transformations, limitations compared with ETL tools, and when to push logic upstream. Question 18. How do incremental extract refreshes work in Tableau? An incremental refresh adds only new rows to an extract based on a selected field, commonly an increasing ID or timestamp. This is faster than a full refresh for large datasets. The catch is that Tableau generally appends new data. It will not reliably handle changed or deleted historical records unless the design accounts for that. I use incremental refreshes for append-only fact tables, but schedule periodic full refreshes when corrections can happen. Make sure to cover the incremental key field, append-only behavior, full refresh fallback, risks with updated or deleted records, refresh scheduling, and database timestamp or ID requirements. Question 19. How would you build a map visualization in Tableau and troubleshoot geographic issues? To build maps, I assign geographic roles to fields like country, state, city, or postal code. Then use Tableau's generated latitude and longitude. If Tableau cannot recognize locations, I check spelling, country context, ambiguous city names, or custom geocoding. For advanced use, I bring in spatial files or use map layers. I choose filled maps for regional comparison and symbol maps for point-level metrics, while watching mark count for performance. In your answer, discuss geographic roles, generated latitude and longitude, custom geocoding, map layers, spatial files, unknown locations, filled maps versus symbol maps, and performance considerations. Question 20. Walk me through an end-to-end Tableau dashboard project you delivered. I start by clarifying the business decision the dashboard must support. Then identify data sources, grain, refresh needs, and metric definitions. Next, I model the data, create calculations, build wireframes, and review early with stakeholders. After development, I validate numbers against source queries, optimize performance, and publish with proper permissions and refresh schedules. A strong project story should end with impact, such as faster reporting, reduced manual work, or better operational visibility. Be sure to structure the answer around requirements, data discovery, modeling, calculations, dashboard design, performance tuning, validation, publishing, stakeholder feedback, adoption metrics, and business impact. If you are still with us, congratulations! You are much ahead of the rest and serious about preparing for your interview. We hope we were able to add value to your preparation and create some helpful content. Do not forget to like and share this video. Your small act can do great things for us.